What up, guys? So today's podcast, we're going to have, or on today's podcast, we're going to have Brian Littlefield. He is the guy he started with Origin back in the day, and then he got into the whole Jocko Fuel thing. So we're going to talk about supplements with him. Um, sort of we're going to talk about supplements in general on the podcast, but obviously, he's going to have a slant where he's coming from, and he's going to share some of the stuff that he does with Jocko Fuel to create supplements and, him and I have had conversations before about like really bad supplements that are like out there in the market and people talk about them. And so, we'll talk about it from that standpoint. And obviously it's going to be a pro Jocko Fuel, pro Origin kind of podcast. One of the things I wanted to share with you guys before I get into the podcast is like when I went to the first Origin camp that I went to, Pete brought me out to as kind of just like a guest and, teach a little bit, whatever. I got there midweek, and my first day there, was the factory tour. So they took you to the factory to see where the gis are made. And then afterwards they took us to the Jocko Fuel distribution place. I rode with Pete. So I got to like hang back with Pete. And so I'm just kind of, fly on the wall with this guy's behind the scenes. Right. And I'm just following him around for like half the day. And I got to see a little bit behind the scenes, which I think is cool because, again, I'm just following around with him. And then I saw Brian and Jocko, whatever. And I got to see those guys talk about their business. And I got to see the way that they talk to their employees about their business. I got to hear the employees talk about their business. And one of the things that's cool is from it's not a show, right? So I've been around guys who have done that thing where it's like they put on a front and then as soon as the lights are off, they turn into a different person. Which we all turn into slightly different people because if we know the lights are on, we like turn on a little bit. But you know what I mean? When I mean turn into a different person, I mean, they like flip the script and they're like, they don't really give a damn about what they're talking about. They're just trying to say it. Right. Think like politician type stuff, right? Where a person says this, but then that's not really what's going on. I got to see those guys talk about their business and what's really important to them. I got to hear them talk to their employees with closed doors and like what is actually important to the company. And when it came to like the supplements and the manufacturing of this stuff. And so a lot of the stuff that you're going to hear Brian talk about when he's talking about, we're trying to do the best job that we can, make good supplements that, that have integrity to the way they're made and they're good for people, all this stuff. I mean, they really are trying to do that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And again, new data can come out about the dangers of this or the benefits of this. This happens all the time. But, with the information that they have at hand right now, they're trying to do the best job they can to make supplements. Like Jocko, his whole thing is like, he wants to make supplements that he could give to his kids.
Sure.
You know what I mean? That he could give to his kids with 100%, no problems whatsoever. And so I think that's a cool thing. It's a cool mission. And so we've had the guys from Origin here on the podcast before, different people that work there. And I like doing that because I was around it, and it's cool to support people that I think are trying to do a good job by others. Right. So again, we'll get into the podcast with Brian, talk about supplements and talk about some of the Origin stuff and the Jocko supplements. And you guys can enjoy that. And so hopefully you guys enjoy the podcast, and big thanks to our sponsors for helping make the podcast happen. One of the supplements that I take on a regular basis is Charlotte's Web CBD. So CBD is a really popular supplement. It's been out there, but as we'll talk about today with the supplementing stuff, right? There's a lot of stuff that people get away with. So for instance, the idea of proprietary blends, we'll talk about that later. That is basically a way for companies to shoe in supplements and put stuff into supplements that may or may not be, basically they can play around with the dosages, right? So they can put whatever minuscule amount of a supplement they want to, but they can say, hey, it includes this. There was even a really popular movie back in about some years ago. It was called like Bigger, Stronger, Faster. And in that show, he basically goes through the legal ways to do it, but he creates a supplement. And it says it has all these different things, and it's like some pills, capsules, and it says proprietary blend.
Sure.
And so, with the supplements, it's like he could put like 99% rice flour and then like 1% of what the active ingredient is. And again, that's an issue with that. And so one of the things that happened with CBD is an unregulated supplement. The FDA doesn't regulate it yet. It's going to happen someday, but not yet. And so with that, people can get away with all kinds of stuff, kinds of chicanery. So, you get this supplement, you look on the bottle, and it doesn't even have to say proprietary blend. It can just be like, hey, we've got this much in it. But then there have been companies that do third-party testing, and then they take the CBD and they're like, hey, we put it through the ringer, and you have too much of this, or you don't have enough of this, or you have this and this isn't even on the ingredient list, but they can get away with it. One of the things that's cool about Charlotte's Web is they make this CBD product. They grow the hemp. They grow it themselves. They produce it themselves from top to bottom. The whole production process is a closed system. They just do it, right? But what's cool is they're third party tested. So whatever they say is in that bottle is what's in that bottle, which is important for some of you guys, where if you have to use like their broad spectrum product that, again, because if you're tested for THC or whatever, you have to use that product. You got to make sure that you know what's in there. But regardless, what's in the bottle is what's in the bottle. And so again, I feel comfortable sharing them with you because I know they make one of the best products out there for the CBD market. So if you guys have ever wanted to try CBD, or if you already use CBD and you want to save some money on a product, go to their website at Charlotte's Web. Use a promo code Chewjitsu20, CHEWJITSU20 to save 20% off the order on whatever you buy. Also, thanks to my buddy Matt at Epic Roll. If you guys are watching the video version, I am wearing an Epic Roll shirt right now. Giving you guys a heads up, we will have some new rash guards made from Matt coming up sometime in the near future. I like what Matt does. He puts together some really cool designs, has high quality stuff. I'm getting him to make my new gym rash guards and shorts, and then we're going to do some jiu-jitsu rash guards and shorts coming up. And so I'm excited about both of those. And again, he is a jiu-jitsu practitioner. He's in our community. You will see him out there. If you go to competitions and you go to jiu-jitsu events, you'll see him out and about. I know he just got back from Master World. So he's someone that's within our community that, also produces gear for us as well. So again, I like to support him. If you guys want to check out some of his stuff to get some new merch or new gear, go to his website at epicrollbjj.com. And then if you find something you like, save 15% on the order with the promo code Chewjitsu. Again, CHEWJITSU. Also, thanks to Manscaped for supporting the podcast. Manscaped is one of the premier men's grooming companies out there. Again, they've been a sponsor of ours for a while, and they've consistently come out with better and better products for what they're doing. Their trimmer has morphed into multiple iterations. It's gotten better. It seems like the battery life's longer. It doesn't give me any nicks or whatever, like when my wife has to shear my back hair and everything else. The beard trimmer they got, it's awesome. Like, being able to adjust without having to clip off, like take the guards off. You can just slide up and down the little dial. Again, that might be a feature that maybe some other ones have, but I never used one like that. I was always using a trimmer, switching the guards, and kind of a pain in the butt. And again, everything that they've made has been really good quality. And some of the stuff I've had at this point for several years, and it's still going strong. So again, good quality stuff that'll last you, does a good job. And again, so if you are a man and you want to step up your grooming game and you want to do so well with some of the best products out there, I would check out Manscaped. And if you know a man in your life that you would like to give him something to step up his game, and again, go on their website, manscaped.com. When you go on there, if you find anything you'd like and you'd like to save a bit of money, you can do so with the promo code Chewjitsu, and CHEWJITSU. I say that, by the way, I spell that out because some people think I'm saying jiu-jitsu. It's very close, right? It's the whole point of it. Chewjitsu20 for 20% off the order, and you get free shipping. So again, if you've never checked out their website, I encourage you to go in there and just browse through, see what you find. I've pretty much tried almost everything that they've had. And everything I've been really satisfied with, both the smell of the lotions and everything else, down to the quality and the actual like utility of their trimmers and everything else that they have. Also, guys, if you want to support the podcast directly and get an ad-free version of the podcast, so you don't have to listen to these ads if you don't want to, you can go to our, not our website, but Patreon's website, patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And upon joining, you'll get access to an exclusive library of content. You'll also get the ad-free version of the podcast. And again, we'll be adding some extras in there coming up soon, and just letting you guys know in the future, we've got some stuff in the works that I think you guys will be interested in, that'll be coming up sometime this year, probably towards the end. But we'll let the Patreon. I think what we'll probably do is whenever we launch it, we'll give the Patreon people a special deal with it. But again, if you guys are not part of the Patreon, if you'd like to get access to some exclusive content we put on the back end, go to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. It's an inexpensive price, supports the podcast that you guys listen to every week, and you can get some cool stuff for it. Also, if you guys want to get my daily email that I send out, and get some exclusive offers that I give away, and get a free set of jiu-jitsu ebooks that can help you out with everything from your jiu-jitsu training to building a game plan for your particular jiu-jitsu style. Check out my website at chewjitsu.net/join, JOIN. Again, Chewjitsu, not jujitsu. And you can go to the website there, sign up there with your email list, your email address. I will send you an email once a day, typically. Sometimes, most time not on weekends, but sometimes. And again, I include or I give away special offers through that I don't give away anywhere else. Like, for instance, just as an example, this week I have a discount going on with one of my guard passing series, and I also include a special recording that I did at one of my seminars. I'm giving it away as a free gift. Now, if you're listening to this at the time of recording, it's already gone. It's already been done. But like, I like to include little specials like that. And again, it's really hard to encapsulate all that on like a 5-second social media post, right? So it's kind of like my freebies I give to the Chew crew. I give them little special gifts and things like that when we do things as part of it. And again, people like the emails as well. So if you want to join up, chewjitsu.net/join it, and you can get my daily email. And guys, with that said, let's get into the podcast. How'd you get into the pod, or the whole thing with Origin anyway? Like, I mean, because we had Pete on the podcast before. We know how he kind of got started, but how did you get sucked into this thing? Because obviously what it started off as and what it sort of morphed into is a very different thing. And you've had to probably, I'm sure, take on a lot of different hats and roles in it. But how did you get pulled into it?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. I was doing jiu-jitsu and I had heard of Origin, and actually one of my training partners at the time, when I was living in Ohio, we weren't far from each other many years back. He was like an Origin fanatic, and I knew that they had the facility up in Maine, and they had been operating for a couple of years at that time. And so I was just going back to visit family where I grew up in Maine, and I randomly like hit them up. I think I hit Pete up and was like, "Hey, can I stop by and train?" And of course he was welcoming. So I went in and trained, and like I walked through the doors the very first time and like saw a loom running and was like, "What the fuck is this place?" And it was just this little micro, I mean, beyond micro factory at the time, right? It was literally like 2,000 square feet. And there was a loom, a couple of sewing machines, a shipping table, a cutting table. That was it. Yeah. And so, yeah, it was just, and I was obsessed. I was hooked because I've always had, I don't know why. I have some American manufacturing heritage in my blood, like on my grandparents' side, and my grandfather worked in the mills. So like I have a lot of that heritage, I guess, but it wasn't like talked about growing up. So, but I have an affinity towards it. So I just was like, hey, how can I help? And that's what started it.
I mean, I think that's a thing for us, right? I mean, like, I feel like all of us, to create something, I mean, really there's some allure to that. I mean, even like if you may not like be into it or want to do it yourself, but you can look at someone crafting something and you can just geek out by that. That's so cool. They're making that, And I think that's something that a lot of Americans, how old are you, Brian?
38.
38. So same age as me, right? So around the same age, we came up in a time where basically we were losing all that, right? When we were coming up, we were like, all of our manufacturing was getting shipped off. There's less and less manufacturing jobs. But when we look back and say, like, as an American, like sort of in our like heyday, that were, like, that's what we kind of romanticize about. We look back and like, we were making everything. Like we were like making stuff, we were producing stuff. And I think there's something to that. There's something fulfilling, meaningful to actually creating something that I think a lot of us find some drive or some sort of pull towards.
Yeah, absolutely. There's something to be said about like using your hands to make something, and this new, and I think a lot of that that burnout that you see, and a lot of that job hopping that you see in like that tech sector, like it's hard to, when you don't have that tangible thing, that physical thing that that customer is going to go and experience and love. you know, it's kind of funny. Like he's, you know, the biggest voice in the world right now, probably, but Joe Rogan is like the best advocate and we don't even pay him. Like the testimonials that he gives, like his explanation of why he loves it is the perfect one. Like if you want to hear like why, and I can't do it justice like he says it. The craftsmanship and everything that goes into it, like it touches the soul. That's what you were talking about. For me, that's what it was. It was like, this touches my soul, and I feel like I want to be part of that bigger mission. So, and you're absolutely right. Like being 38, coming up in the 80s, my starter jacket, the jeans, the hoodies we wore, everything had a Made in America tag in it. It was, we lived through that transition as kids where everything was just outsourced.
Yeah, I mean, like when I got my first Origin gi, Chewy would start like wearing them. You know, he'd get a couple and he'd wear them around. I was like, all right, what's the big deal? And then like I tried one on. I was like, all right, I feel the difference. Like you can feel it. And then I got an Origin gi and I was like, oh, it like comes out of the washing machine. It's almost dry. And like it was when we went to Costa Rica. Like I took one gi. It was my Origin gi because I was like, I want to have a gi that's not going to get me soaked. I'm going to be able to breathe in it and move around it because we're in some pretty warm climate. So and just like it feels good. Like you like it's a feeling. To me, it's like when I touch it and I like feel it in my hands or I wear it, like it feels different like than the other gis that I have. And I think that's like you don't understand until you actually try it out and actually experience it.
Yeah, people forget that Origin was born on the concept of innovating the gi. It wasn't actually born on the idea of bringing back jobs and resurrecting manufacturing.
Right.
That was only something that came later after Pete had his like kind of you know, whatever you call it, moment where, you know, he had that epiphany and he was just like, I need to do this, but I need to do it in the States. That was later. It was, I want to reinvent the gi. Like he looked at the gi like we would look at a leather football helmet now, like that hadn't changed in hundreds of years, that kimono. So people forget, and we're so loud in a good way, in my opinion. You know, Origin is so loud about, you know, the American made thing. People often forget about like the improvements around the textiles, the fabrics, the yarns, the cuts, and trying to push the boundaries on that. So
yeah, that was like when I first did the pre-order with the gis. You could actually, the first Origin gi I got a hold of was back in 2018. Nicole had given me one, and I'm like, hey, let me take this thing for a test run, and you know, I'm gonna beat the hell out of it, and I'll let you know if I want to do an order, because you know, I want to make sure it's a good product, because they are more expensive, right? And so like, you know, I want to make sure if like you guys, if I'm going to go tell people to spend money, I want to make sure it's good. We'll talk more about that later with some bad products related to supplements, but but when I got a hold of it, it was a great gi. I used it. I beat the crap out of it. I was wearing it all the time, washing it, high heat, everything, just like trying to brutalize it. And I still have the gi. There's not like a rip on it. It's still in great shape. And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. And I mean, I remember like the sale part of it, right? Like you're trying to say, okay, you know, whenever you're selling something, you're always trying to figure out what's your angle. How can I make this appeal to someone? You're like, well, yeah, it is more expensive, but like the quality is unmatched. Right. That's always a cool thing. And it's like, and it's made in America by a person making a living wage. Like that's such an easy thing to connect with, because, you know, who, you know, especially all of us listening mostly in the West, right? Who doesn't want to make a living wage to do what they're doing? Right. And like, who doesn't want a good quality product that's supporting all the values that you support? I mean, it's such an easy thing. And so I think it's you guys, I guess you could say loud, but it's like, it's such an easy mission, such an easy thing to get behind, where it's like, I mean, you kind of want to throw it around because no one else is doing it. So it's probably fun to like throw that around, because it's a beautiful mission and beautiful thing that, you know, again, a lot of people talk about, you know, sort of voting with your dollars for the values that you have. You know, everybody talks about not different products that are being made in, you know, what we would consider unethical conditions and stuff like that. But then it's like, you vote with your dollars. And so like, if you want to support, there are companies out there that do different stuff. Well, then you go pay companies like you, hey, we're voting for you. Like we're saying, we like what you're doing. We want more high quality stuff. We'll take less of it, but we want it to be really top notch, and we want it to be made in an ethical way. Right.
Yeah. I mean, consumerism drives change, right? That's all there is to it. Like, and unfortunately, we drove everything offshore because we didn't care, right? We turned a blind eye, and we need to do the opposite to bring it back, to cut back on, and it's not just the craftsmanship thing. And this is something that Jocko has been really good at. And I would say there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that are going to help improve that awareness that Pete and Jocko have been working on. And that is bringing light to the fact that a new article just came out. I think it was this week or last week, that showed if you have imported apparel on of any sort, on average, I think it's 30% of it is slave labor. So this is a really uncomfortable statement.
Sure.
But as Americans, we offshored slavery.
Yeah.
So what we did, we literally said, hey, we are going to not think about it. We're not going to take ownership of it. We're just going to let someone else do it so that we can save money. Yeah. And that's a really uncomfortable thing to say, but it is the truth. And until you can face the truth, you can't make change. So
sure,
you got to change with your dollars, because if you don't show corporations what you want by choosing where you're going to spend your money, they're never going to change. And I mean, we just saw it with I don't want to get political or anything, but let me put it this way. We've seen it with some other CPG companies and beverage companies recently. When you make a statement or you do something, it can go against you. And that's, of course. Yeah. So
it works. because I mean, that's how the small man, like when it comes to corporate stuff, I mean, first off, like we all know this big corporations, especially, they will do lots of window dressing type stuff just to sort of look the part. You know what I mean? But they really don't give a damn. They're just doing it for PR. But as far as like making actual real change to their company and their structure models, right? They're not going to do that unless, like you said, it affects their bottom line. So like, for instance, like, I wish there was like and maybe there is, I don't know, but I wish there was like a phone, like a smartphone that was a comparable quality, that wasn't made in a factory where people are being treated like garbage, right? Overseas, where they have to have a net around the building. I would pay 3 or 4 times more for a phone one time and just hang on to it for a long time than need a new one every year, which I don't do anyway. But again, I would rather pay more for all these things that I have if I could just have them like made in America. So like Bob down there's making them, and I know he's like being able to take care of his family to do it. But again, if all of us got together for whatever reason, said we're no longer buying these things until you guys move something, they'd move it. It would be done tomorrow. But because, again, there's no unity, no connectedness with all that stuff, it becomes a thing where we talk about it with our words, but then our actions are such that it's like, whatever. Like I made a post on Facebook. I did this. I'm going to go back to like scrolling. Who gives a shit? Whatever. It just kind of becomes that sort of, that kind of thing where there's no action behind those words.
Yeah, exactly. And, as individuals, we have power with our purchasing power. We vote with our purchasing power, but we often feel much like voting. Like we often feel like, oh, it's just my vote. It's just one vote, but everybody feels that way. So nothing ever changes. There needs to be a way for everybody to come together. And what's crazy is we got to see it when everybody got outraged around the drink, and then people started, boycotting.
What drink are we talking about? I don't know.
We're talking about Bud Light.
Oh, Budweiser. Yeah, that's right. That was a thing.
So the Bud Light thing.
That really hurt them.
I mean, really. I mean, they were the number one selling beer in America, if not the world, for how many decades? And then, I mean, to get knocked off the top like that because of a social campaign,
bro. Like, what were you thinking? I mean, it's like it was a dumb thing to do. I mean, whatever, you can say whatever you want to about it, but like, that comes to a point where, like, I mean, again, I'm not saying because if you look at all those beer companies, a lot of them have very progressive values as far as a company structure, where like they were like showing all these different things that Coors did and all these other Anheuser-Busch did. Like, it's fine, but like on the outer term, it's like you don't, like, by doing these different things, you're isolating one group and isolating this group. It's just like, just do your thing and sell beer. Like, again, take care of your people, whatever. But like, yeah, it was nuts, because then you go into the stores, and I remember it was wild. I was going to buy some beer, and you look there in the aisle, and just Bud Light everywhere, Budweiser like hadn't been touched.
Well, the other thing, they were giving it basically away for free. Like you could buy it and then you could get like a rebate for like free beer or something. And like that's how bad it got, which I thought was kind of funny. But yeah, I mean, you just like do your thing, sell beer. People are going to drink it if they like it. I mean, you don't have to, I guess it's the marketing thing, right? And that's a tricky, because you're trying to kind of read the landscape of the country or what people are into or what's kind of, you're trying to sell more product essentially. And, for you being, you kind of run Jocko Fuel, correct?
Yeah. So I was the managing partner for the first few years. Now we have a big leadership and executive team. Nice. Like we're way beyond my individual skill sets as an organization.
That's a big
God.
Thing. Yeah, that's a big thing that you've kind of, I guess, like, I don't even know if it's accident, right? Like you being a jiu-jitsu black belt and going to train it, with Pete, and then all of a sudden you become kind of part of the company and integrated in, and now you kind of run a certain portion of Jocko Fuel and Origin essentially. So like, can you actually tell us about that process? Like even just starting jiu-jitsu, was any of this by accident, do you feel like, or was it something, how did it all work out?
Yeah, it kind of was by accident. So to like try and summarize it, because it's a long story. So I was I was like most kids that grew up, a couple boys, and I have brothers and sisters, half sisters. I grew up in a sports oriented household. I was the only one that stopped playing sports like in high school. So I was also the only one between my parents, because it was 3 stepbrothers in the household during my let's say elementary age. So a little bit of different genetics. I fell off from being active, blew up, got really fat, really overweight, went off took a year off. That didn't help. Then went off to school and continued to like just get big. So I'm 5'10". I was, I think about 265 pounds of like pure, no muscle, pure fat. I was just a slob. And and so I found my father was always like super into like not as much like Ayurvedic medicine, but and like Chinese medicine, but like more like natural ways to like heal. And so
non-traditional like medicine.
Yeah, he definitely believed in like getting in your vitamins and having a healthy diet and stuff. But nevertheless, like and I always excelled in like the sciences, which was weird, but I was always interested in business. So I go off to school and I blow up. I ended up finding my way into the gym. Like I was like, I got to find my way into the gym. And so I get into the gym through a buddy of mine, and I start losing a bunch of weight, start putting on a bunch of muscle. I'm feeling great. And at the university that I was going to, there was this thing called the Racers Cafe. So this cafe was where I would go eat between classes every day. And I ran into a guy who ended up forming a great relationship. We're lifelong friends now. And he basically, he would see me at the gym, and he would be wrestling in pajamas in this little room off to the corner. And so I would be like going around the track and like lifting weights. And then he saw me, and he was like, "Hey man, I see you at the gym working out. You should come to jiu-jitsu sometime." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm good." I was like, "Thanks, man. I'm just going to keep, lifting weights and stuff." So he lured me in by basically, he would come in, or I would come into the cafe, and he'd be like, "Give me $1." And I was like, "Okay." So I'd give him $1, and he'd give me a giant plate of like turkey and cheese. And so he would just hook me up big time. And so he basically coaxed me into coming in and trying a jiu-jitsu class one time. And we would chat about MMA because we were both fans. Mm-hmm. And so he eventually convinced me to like come try a jiu-jitsu class. And it's that like age-old story where like I literally put down the weights and didn't touch them again for years and put it on the gi. Like I was hooked like instantly. Like it's that same story. Like the 13-year-old kid choked me out, and I was like probably 220 at the time and felt pretty big, and was just like, I'm humiliated and I love it. So you either love it or hate it, right? At that moment. So
100%.
Yeah.
You have to be one of those guys where you either decide when you get choked out by that 13-year-old kid, either you quit or you're like, "No, I'm doing this. I got to learn this."
And that's what it was. I was like, I need to learn this. And I was always into leverage, not just physical leverage, but leveraging opportunities, leveraging things, leveraging products. That's why I've always been into, I like gadgets, I like tech, I like supplementation, so you can leverage it as a benefit. It's not a replacement. So I was always into leverage. So this idea that you could use this leverage of body and mind to overcome a stronger, more dominant opponent was just like instant addiction. So that's what it was. And then of course I dove in headfirst and found myself quickly training 5 days a week, sometimes twice a day for a couple of years. So that's how I felt jiu-jitsu. And then I was actually, fast forward a couple of years, I was running a supplement store adjacent to, after I graduated college, adjacent and like in this little plaza with our jiu-jitsu school. And I was running the jiu-jitsu school for my instructor at the time. He literally went on tour with a band. And so I was like a purple belt. I'm running the school, and I'm selling some supplements and stuff. And that's when I had actually traveled up to Maine and got introduced to Pete through training. So he just knew I was into nutrition, I was into jiu-jitsu. And when I said to him, "Hey man, I want to help," he's like, "Well, go back home and think about how you could do that, because we're just up here trying to keep our head above water." Yeah. And so I was like, "Hey man, like I'm in the Midwest. I cross train. I travel all over the place. It's in your area. So obviously I would head down. I would train in Columbus. I would train in Dayton. I would train in Toledo, Detroit. I would Fort Wayne. So I would do all this different training. So I would just pack gis into my trunk. And I would literally just drive around.
I remember that. I remember back in the day, like we were trying to, it just never happened. But
we tried to line
up. Hey man, I'm gonna come down there or whatever. And I was like, okay, and it just never happened. But I remember you were like doing the Midwest like origin like road show.
Literally what it was. It was just like a road show. So selfishly, I was like, hey, like cover my travel. Through my business and through my work, I had my bills paid pretty much, and so I was like, cover my travel, like, and let me go on and tell people about it. And what we ended up doing was creating the wholesale program. It didn't exist before. And we went from 0 to effectively none to over 120 accounts or schools that were carrying wholesale origin products in like a year. So it got big quick for us at the time. That was big. So Pete literally said, "Hey man, like you're actually selling too much product in the stores. Like, why don't you come back to Maine and help me do this thing?" So that's what I did. I dissolved everything, worked everything out with my business partner in Ohio, and then went back to Maine. And it wasn't long after, literally months later, we had the opportunity to buy out this other little supplement company that jiu-jitsu people will probably remember, but it was called Q5.
I remember Q5. Yeah. They had that supplement that was never in stock.
Oh man, which one? There's
it was the one that was supposed to be their like endurance something or other. One of my guys had it, and he would always complain because he liked it, but he's like, I want to use it, but it's always out of stock.
I think it was Launch Fuel, maybe
something like that.
Yeah. There was a few. To be honest, they weren't that good, but sure. we took it and we rebranded it initially, and then when we realized like, okay, we really need to redo this. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. So I was already into formulations. We were setting up manufacturing facilities, third-party manufacturing facilities to help with scale. So we were getting everything prepared. At the same time, we got introduced to Jocko. Pete went down the conversational journey with him about bringing him on board because he wanted to come on board on the origin side. And when Jocko found out we were doing nutrition and supplementation, like that's when the conversation started. And he's like, well, and people that know his story, like know that he had been burned sort of personally by the supplement industry. Like he had his whole, like, as you can imagine, Jocko's household is very competitive and athletic. So his kids were like growing up on Muscle Milk back in the day when Muscle Milk ended up having that consumer report for heavy metals. And he was very disgruntled by it. As you can imagine, you're feeding it to your kids. It's terrible. So he was very hesitant, but we were able to work through like all of our standardization and like, here's what we're going to live for. And so that's what we did.
Nice. So curious about that because we were talking about like heavy metals and we're talking about this. You're in the supplement industry now, and you guys like have a lot of stuff. And um, one of our conversations that we had a while back ago, we were talking about a supplement company like that had sent me something, and they were like, "Hey, like plug us or whatever." And I remember looking at the supplement, and it was like, it was just like old supplements from like 2000s that like we were selling like Tribulus and stuff, and like was it Velvet Antler or something?
That stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like uber expensive. It was like
yeah.
$250 a month for a 30-day supply or something. Comes in these little vials, and it's supposed to be like super. All these jiu-jitsu guys are posting about it. I'm like, but this is junk, I'm like, and I'm sending it to my guy, and I remember like, this is junk, and I send it to you, and you're like, oh, junk. But with that said, I mean, there's so many like different supplements. What are some of the most useless supplements in your mind, your opinion based upon what you know about the industry and what goes on? What are some of the most useless supplements in your eye that people a lot of times are spewing out there or talking about or whatever it might be?
Man, useless supplements. I think for the most part nowadays, one of the most useless supplements is a fat burner. And the reason why I say nowadays is because all the good ones have been banned. Like the ones that actually stuff. Yeah, ephedrine and 1,3, the DMAA, like all those copycats. Yeah.
Are they like beta antagonists or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, long story short, what they're going to do is they're going to cause a huge constriction, a vasoconstriction. That's what's happening, is you're having a massive vasoconstriction. Yes, there's some upregulation with your metabolism. There's some mechanics going on there, but most of the time they're causing a massive restriction. And what happens? Like, your heart is the muscle that's working constantly. Yeah. So when you're vasoconstricting and you're making your heart work harder, I mean, you're just burning more calories, right? At the end of the day. So can they work? Absolutely. But only like the hardcore ones. And then with that comes risk and side effects.
Right. It's like
cost.
Yeah. You're putting more stress on your heart when you could just eat less calories
and work out. So it's like eat less, move more, right? That's the key. It's like people forget that there's a simple combination for success, and that is the equation is simple. It's caloric deficit. Like, you just got to be in a deficit. So if your base metabolic rate is X, you just need to consume less than that, or consume that and move more. You just always have to be in a deficit. And if you're in a deficit, you're going to lose weight. The idea of like hormones and medications and genetics and bad sleep, those things all matter. But like, if you add them all up, and let's say they're all stacked against you, that might be 10%. That might be 10% against you.
Yeah. Well, that's like something I remember talking with my nutrition coach. We were talking about this, and he it's a crude thing to say, but like, you'll talk about, oh, I can't lose weight, I've got a thyroid problem or whatever, And by the way, I like someone listening, I have like, it's subclinical, but I have a low thyroid function, right? So again, that kind of plays against me. It is what it is, right? But I was like, you look at the concentration camps, there are no fat people there, right? Like at some point, like your thyroid problem, your hormones are not going to be an issue, right? Like, you just have to be honest with yourself and say, look, like, like you said, maybe if Eugene and I are here and my thyroid function's a little bit lower than his, and let's say we're the same weight and stuff and same muscular composition, well, I might lose an extra 100 calories that I got to cut out because his metabolism is pumping a little bit better than mine. That's okay. Like, you just got to be honest with yourself, and you got to dial it in a little bit. But and I think really what that comes down to is it's a simple equation. But I think for most people, they would really benefit from actually having a coach work with them to dial in, because most people don't realize what they're even eating half the time. They're like, I'm eating good, I'm eating these foods, but they don't actually know what those calories add up to, and then what they, where they're at and all that stuff. So fat burners. So yeah, most of those useless supplements for right now, fat burners are less than the hardcore ones. And even if then you're going to like start putting stress on your heart, then not ideal.
Yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind. Other than that, I would say, back in the day, we used to think the BCAAs, the branched chain amino acids, we used to think those were like the next big thing. I did too. Yeah. A lot of the preliminary research that came out that was that had sketchy funding, let's say, it ended up not being like necessarily the case. So absent of all the other amino acids, BCAAs alone do not seem to improve muscle protein synthesis. So you're not going to have any hypertrophic effects from BCAAs. So if you like them, if you like tasting them, or if you feel like there's some sort of placebo effect, that's great. But BCAAs, like the most robust research now shows it's not really effective.
What do you think? And I think one of the most researched is creatine, right? So creatine is something that's been shown to kind of help. As far as that, is there anything besides creatine, or if you think creatine is it, what do you think has been some of the most helpful supplements that maybe are out there? And then let's go into formulating kind of the products you guys have. What do you all have, and what do you think is most beneficial maybe for jiu-jitsu especially?
Yeah, so creatine is it's almost like the foundation that almost everyone should be on, really. It used to be looked at as a bodybuilder supplement. Now a lot of the research is showing the cognitive benefits of it.
It's like a nootropic, correct?
Yeah.
It's a nootropic, exactly. Think about it. A lot of your brain is water, and for a good reason. And if your brain and your body can be more hydrated, because that's essentially what you're doing with creatine. Like, you used to think of like being bloated. It's intracellular water, right, that you're trying to take in. So, which is why creatine can help with explosive performance and those muscle pumps, right? It's like you're bringing in more water when you're pumping the muscle. You're squeezing the water outside of the cell. You're filling up volume. You're creating volume. You're creating a pump. You're getting more explosive energy from those exercises based on the fact that you're just basically optimizing your cells. That's really the easiest way to think about it. So if you're doing that for your body, can we apply that to the brain? And what we found is yes, absolutely. So it's not only good for building muscle, it's great for endurance, explosive workouts, cognitive benefits. It really doesn't stop there. Actually, the thing that I'm exploring now is like the safety profiles and the levels at which we can maybe form a new recommendation for age, because I think that we can reduce the age and get it introduced into like youth sports.
Is there any other products or any other supplements that you think are also helpful, and especially even for jiu-jitsu in particular? And then let's talk about kind of the formulations, the kind of things you guys have and how you create your product.
Yeah, that's a dynamic question with a lot of variables, because is it like your everyday, family member and professional that's training, or is it a competitive person like that they're getting ready for competition? But I would say, like, in general, overall, I've leaned more into recovery and intra workout performance than I have like pre. I used to be big on pre, and even thinking about like other ergogenic compounds that have been shown to increase like explosivity and power output and endurance. I think those things are great, but I think more people could benefit from making sure that they're properly hydrated, that they're consuming something with an actual appropriate electrolyte balance, not something with only 700 milligrams of potassium and no sodium and chloride.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That's
Was that one Prime?
Yeah.
The one that has,
yeah, Prime has a ton of potassium, but not enough sodium. You're like, what are you doing?
Which is not proper for
rehydration. That could be super dangerous, I imagine, if you start messing around with your electrolytes too much.
That's exactly. Actually, it could be more dangerous than not consuming any at all.
Yeah.
So
I saw a video of like a fighter that was like rehydrating, and they were just drinking water and didn't have any sodium, and they started having seizures.
Sure.
It was like terrible to watch, but it's like, I mean, some of that stuff is like, it seems like if you're cutting weight, you should have some basic understanding of kind of how to rehydrate, like what the formula is not to rehydrate too quickly, to do it gradually, so your body can kind of absorb it. You don't like flood your cells. And things like that.
But even like with like the nutritional knowledge you'll get from like doctors, like, they don't think about like us, and they'll say us like sodium is the devil. Yeah. Right. Yes. But it's like for athletes, we need sodium because we burn through so much of it through our sweat. And what's funny is I remember like years ago, I went to the doctor one time, and this is back when I really wasn't having a lot of sodium in my diet. I remember going to the doctor, and I would sometimes have slightly elevated blood pressure. It would be like, like a little bit like the low 130s over like, 70 or something. So not terrible, but it's a little elevated. And I remember adding more sodium to my diet, and I would go back and routinely now it was under 120 at 70. right? So it's like 120 over 70, 118 over 70. It's like consistently there. I'm like, huh. It's like, but I thought like this was supposed to raise it, you know what I mean? But at the same time, it created problems for me.
Yeah. And so that's the problem, is like the whole misconception came from the theory that, oh, because sodium, what it does is it pulls water into the blood. So it creates more blood volume, therefore increasing blood pressure for some people. And that's also really only dangerous for people who have pre-existing heart conditions already, which is usually not jiu-jitsu people and athletes. Not saying that they don't, or that none of them do, but most people that are training and eating a somewhat balanced diet, like they're not obese, like especially people that have been doing it for a while. So I would say the majority of people don't have to worry about consuming too much sodium. I would say they might have to worry about, like what you said, was not consuming enough sodium, especially around times of intense exercise. So recovering with an electrolyte product can rapidly improve how you feel, especially for like follow-up training sessions, especially if it's same day. It's like night and day. So
100%.
yeah. So for me, like hydration is a really good one. Something with like functional carbohydrates intra-workout can be really good as well, especially if you're really really pushing. But a lot of my focus is for like jiu-jitsu and nutrition is around recovery. So again, I go back to creatine, another example of people who think that like that mindset of like, hey, creatine it's only for people trying to build muscle or bodybuilders. They say a lot of people think the same thing still about like whey protein or any form of protein powder. And they don't realize like most people are under consuming their daily amount of protein to just maintain the muscle that you have on your frame, like just to maintain that. And so, and we also forget that it's not just muscle that benefits from protein. The amino acids that especially the essential amino acids, they're essential because they help with the rest of the body's processes. They're needed. So when we're under consuming protein, what happens is our body will start to break down muscle to feed the other needs. So unless you want to sort of wither away, and the best example I can think of is like an endurance runner. Like they look frail, like they look absolutely frail. They don't, like the majority of them that I've talked to or worked with, like they're not focusing on protein much for recovery. Like they're like, I just need to rehydrate. I got to get a bunch of sodium and just
Carbs and stuff like that.
Carbs, exactly. Like they're only thinking about what's going to fuel them, not recover them. So that's my take on it. I think more people could benefit from protein.
Yeah, and you're right about that. I know that I started using an electrolyte supplement, and I remember noticing a huge difference. I'd have my morning training session, and then like later on that day, I remember feeling not nearly as tired. Mentally, it was way sharper. I had more work time in me. Or if I came back to train later that night, I was still mentally more sharp. And physically, I felt better. A question here for you, because again, you guys have a green supplement. And I mean, green supplements have been around for a while, but I feel like they're picking up a lot of steam right now.
Yeah.
And there's some different popular ones out there. Take me through the process of at least of one, like kind of what goes into a green supplement, because I don't know, to me, it's like that, when I look back on the label there, it'll just tell me all this stuff's in it. And I have no clue of how much is actually in there, because again, they could say, well, we have all this stuff in there, and they could have like this much of the good stuff, and then they could have all this other stuff as filler. But for you guys, like, what is the process of making a green supplement, and what do you think, what's useful that goes into it, or what are you guys trying to accomplish with that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So they've risen massively in popularity over the last few years, and actually have, I would say recently, and maybe that's because I'm connected to the industry a lot, but recently have come under fire a little bit, because a lot of people are like, oh, you don't need it. This isn't something you need. You don't need. And listen, I always say, like, regardless of what our product is, greens included, if you don't need it, if you don't need to supplement, again, these aren't called replacements. These are called supplements, additive. That's how people should think about them. If you don't need it, don't take it, like, period. Now, the difference between our product and let's say other products is that what you're getting in them may be more additive than what you're going to get from something else. And I'm trying to think of a good way to I'm not big on like calling people out. I try and like steer clear, take the high road.
I hear you.
But
so, and I don't want to call it necessarily anybody, but we can talk about it in vague
yeah,
terms.
yeah. So in vague terms, let's just say the biggest green supplement, for instance. So I think everybody knows who I'm talking about when I say the biggest one, the one you see advertisements for all the time. Number one, they hide everything behind proprietary blends, right? So if your listeners, I'm sure you guys know, but if your listeners don't know, a proprietary blend is essentially when you can take all the ingredients and you can stuff it under one quantity in a single list. You don't have to individually name those ingredients.
And those don't have to be exact. So you could have any range of amount or whatever of all that stuff in there because it's all together.
Exactly. Legally, it is supposed to be force ranked by quantity from top to bottom. I know that there's some companies that play that game because there's not a lot of scrutiny in it from the agencies, but nevertheless, that's how it's supposed to be done. Even still, you look at the top selling green supplement, in their largest proprietary blend, the second most abundant ingredient is soy lecithin. Like, who needs to be consuming bulk amounts of soy lecithin? Regardless of how you feel about soy and phytoestrogens and stuff like that as a man, like I think there's pros and cons to the science for it, and I'm certainly not going to get into that conversation. But nevertheless, you don't hear a lot of people like, man, I really need to get some more soy lecithin in my diet. They're like, no, I need some more greens. I need some more fruits and vegetables and other things that, like I want more. Maybe they want to get broccoli sprouts because they've heard about the sulforaphane found in broccoli sprouts and how it's anti-cancer and how there's so many of these benefits from these phytonutrients, because that's really, it's not a macronutrient product. It's a micronutrient product. These phytonutrients, sulforaphane, other polyphenols and flavonols, those things that have positive mechanistic action in the body to trigger positive benefits, those things come in these plants and vegetables. And when essentially when they're concentrated in this form, you're removing the sugars, you're removing the water. So people see, oh, well, there's 1,300 milligrams of, I'm just going to use, banana powder or something.
Yeah.
Well, do you know how much of that product is sugar and water? So if you were to take that and actually add in all the sugar and water, it would be a lot more than 1,300 milligrams of concentrated powder. People they forget about that. So they think about the dose as if they were to take 1.3 grams of banana and put it on the scale next to the powder. It's not the same. So obviously our product has no proprietary blends. None of ours do, but the greens for sure. So you can see every single ingredient and what the amounts are. And I would also say, like, most people are pretty stoked about all the ones that are in there and included. And then the other thing when working with Jocko of why we did greens, not just because he basically eats steak and potatoes with the occasional Caesar salad, and probably doesn't get enough fruits and vegetables in his diet, nor do I. I'm a steak guy. So one of the other reasons is because anytime that we're going to get into a category, we're like, how can we innovate or improve upon it? Like, we're never going to be a me too. And so we knew we could make it more transparent. We knew we could make it more effective or efficacious. And the one thing we wanted to do with greens, which was fun for us, was let's make a greens product that doesn't taste like shit. Because all the other greens on the market taste like you just went and cut your lawn on your hands and knees with your mouth. It's like, this is disgusting. It's like lawn cutting. It's like,
makes you feel like but it's like you suffer through it and you're like, yeah, I'm getting something healthy because it tastes bad.
Exactly. You're like, oh, and so every time I ask so I love asking people this question. I'm like, do you take greens? Or they're like, I take greens. Like, I take this greens. 9 out of 10 people I ask have to mix it with something. They're like, oh, I got to put it in my orange juice, or I throw it in with my protein shake. I'm like, that's disgusting. I'm like, that's nasty. Like, why would you consume a product that you have to choke down or mask? So it was my goal out of the gate to make it actually taste like I want to take it, I want to mix it in water, and I want to actually be able to enjoy it and not have to choke it down. And I feel like we did that. And I would say the feedback that we've gotten in the reviews has been resounding and speaks for itself. It actually instantly became, a lot of people don't know this, but it's our number one selling SKU.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it exploded. And then so we did, it was a pineapple coconut, and then we ended up doing a peach flavor, and they've just been Richter. People love it because it's really the only one available right now with that level of transparency and that taste. So
that's interesting to me because I do take some greens, and I've looked around, and I'm gonna have to try your all stuff because I have not, and I'm curious to try it. And I like I think there's these greens for some people. Like for me, like I need something for like my gut, so like probiotics and prebiotics, things like that. So those type of things are pretty important. And I think having, obviously getting more greens in your diet, it's important as well for various reasons. Just kind of like filling in the gaps essentially of maybe where your diet may have a few, your diet may not be complete. And I think it's something that tastes good is obviously it's going to be a benefit. It's going to make you drink it. Essentially, you're going to enjoy drinking and want to drink it. So I'm going to give you guys stuff a try for sure. I'm just interested in it just to see what the difference is.
Yeah, well, I'll get some out to you guys and let me know what you think. And you're actually spot on. One of the number one benefits that people come back and say is like they feel like their gut health is significantly improved, and there is a hefty probiotic blend in that product as well. So
it's super important, and it's just an easy way to get that stuff in. Just supplement all together. So
yeah, we eat a lot of like not just processed foods, like that's a whole rabbit hole, but cooked foods. Right? Like we cook off a lot of that healthy bacteria. So, we don't have the diet that we used to. And some of that's good actually, but with the rise in, I don't know if you guys follow it, but with the rise in colon cancer in young people, it's rapidly growing. I attribute it to a number of things, one of which is overuse of antibiotics in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s generation before doctors really started to pull back. Mm-hmm. And also not consuming enough foods with healthy bacteria to replenish that gut.
Yep.
You're not going to get it in ultra processed foods. So
that's cool. What's the direction of like, what you guys are working on now? What's coming in the future? What are you guys working on? Like, what's the goal with all this stuff?
Yeah, there's like so much going on right now. I'm literally drinking the newest flavor that isn't even out yet.
What flavor is that?
The blue raspberry.
A blue raspberry.
What did we have? What do we have in Costa Rica?
The Jocko Go.
Yeah, we had some. Some stuff for recovery. It was really good. I don't know what it was. And we had some powder.
Oh, that was the electrolyte supplement.
Electrolyte.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Because you had those were awesome.
And we have blue raz too. So we have blue raz. I actually have the lemon lime here as well. I live on these because I am one of those people that I'm personally chronically deficient in magnesium. So I have to consume a ton of magnesium, and I don't get enough of it through my food. So I'm one of those people. Yeah, a lot. I would, and I actually identified this back when 10 years ago when I lived in Ohio. But I'd be like, the next day after a hard train, I'd be driving somewhere like an hour or two, and my calves would just be firing to the point where they're distracting me from the road.
Yeah, they're twitching and stuff, right?
Yes. Yeah. And it cut like 90% out when I finally got the right magnesium levels fixed, and all the muscle crampings mid train, like all that stuff, like totally gone. Like I haven't had cramping in muscles from training in years, just because when you're keeping proper water and electrolytes, because that's hydration, you're like, it's a game changer. I hope people take it more serious.
Yeah, well, I think again, a lot of people just don't think about it. Like I remember I used to train really hard, and as I got older, I noticed that I would get the twitchy muscles at rest, right? So like at rest, they're just twitching or even sometimes doing stuff. And then I remember I would notice more like some just like one-off, like every now and then palpitations would happen, like little skips. Yep. That's weird. I remember I started like supplementing with magnesium, right? So I was like, I'll put a little magnesium into the diet, especially around bedtime. And it's like it went away. Then obviously I have an electrolyte supplement on my hard training days, but at nighttime I have a magnesium supplement at night, And it was like everything just kind of quietened it down. It's like it was done. They still, everybody has them every now and then, but to the degree that they were happening previously, not really much anymore.
Yeah, I would come home from hard training, and if I didn't get enough water in and take my additional magnesium, I would legit wake up in the middle of the night at like 2 or 3 in the morning. My heart would be pounding. I'd be sweating. And I was like, what? I'd be like, I'm fucking dying. Like, I was like, what is going on? It just was so uncomfortable. And it's just so simple. It's just like focus on rehydrating with water and some form of electrolytes, or getting something in with some potassium and magnesium and sodium. It's a game changer.
Yep. And your guys' sleep supplement has some magnesium in it as well. I know that like the sleep supplement has some magnesium, zinc, and all that stuff, but also some tart cherry and some other supplements. Because I've used that one before when I was having to, every now and then, if I like, if I'm kind of like having trouble getting into sync with my sleep, I'll start taking that just to kind of get things rolling again. And it seems to be pretty helpful.
Yeah. The sleep supplement is I mean, it's a sleeper, pun intended. Like, it's like, we don't talk about it enough. We don't give it enough love, and it's massively effective for a lot of people. Like, that tart cherry is essentially, it's a natural, think about it as a natural source of melatonin, that you're not getting that synthetic version.
Yeah.
There's your magnesium, there's theanine in there that's going to help calm the brain.
Sure.
There's even lavender in there, which has been shown to help relax. So there's so many functions of sleep. Like, there's relaxing and getting to sleep, and there's like staying asleep, and then there's also like actually feeling rested. Like, people could sleep through the night, but they wake up like feeling like they hit by a truck and they can't get out of bed and the alarm doesn't work, even though they slept 8 hours. You didn't really sleep efficiently. So that's sleep efficiency. So there's like 3 functions to sleep, and with formulating the product, it was a focus of trying to kind of touch on all those things. With a significant emphasis of like, wind down, shut your eyes, and go to sleep. So,
Brian, what do you what are you kind of most excited about, with kind of looking forward with Origin and Jocko Fuel? What's kind of the one thing that's like really exciting, or something you're working on that's really kind of going to be a big thing coming up for you guys?
and there's so much
Pick one or two.
Yeah, I know. I'm 100% focused on the Jocko Fuel side now. Like, I'm basically just a cheerleader on the Origin side and an advocate for the brand. When it comes to Jocko Fuel, obviously I've been afforded the opportunity now where I only having ran operations for the first few years, and every part of that, now I can just focus on product. I'm most excited about product and sales and marketing. So I'm constantly working with our sales and marketing team. So I'm excited about some of the retail conversations we're having for expansion, because ultimately that's our goal, to bring it everywhere. So anybody that day, if they want to get out and go, they can go get the product. That's a huge mission of ours. Yeah. And then, of course, it's expanding the product line in areas that actually make sense. So, I don't know if I have to pick any individual one. I'd say I'm really excited about our new protein RTD that's coming out. And that's because it's a coffee flavor, and it actually has 95 milligrams of caffeine. So selfishly, it's literally going to be my breakfast. I mean, 30 grams of protein, 95 milligrams of caffeine, and then I probably will be done for 2 hours, and then I'll immediately jump into like my mid-morning meal. So I'm stoked about it. So I'm pretty happy about that one.
Cool. What's been maybe one of the hardest things as far as like, the supplement and like the beverage space is very much like, it's very saturated. There's a lot of people in that space. What's been one of the, like, maybe one of the more difficult things you've had to work through as a company to kind of get you guys, being successful?
Yeah, there's like 3 major hurdles that we've overcome. One was we set up manufacturing of our own bar line, because we were like, hey, we're so good at manufacturing on the Origin side, let's manufacture protein bars. Needless to say, we still don't have a protein bar. We have a protein cookie. We don't have a bar. So we dropped a lot of money and time on that, and that was like our first, as we call it, big tuition payment. We haven't made many, but that was one of them. The other major hurdles that I would say that are somewhat outside of our control, although I want to take ownership of it, is like, when we go into retail, because we're on the radar, let's say in the energy drink category, when we go into retail, these big companies, like they don't want us there. Like we already know that the Monsters and the Red Bulls, like they're talking about us, because we have people that are there that are telling us that, and they don't want us on shelf. And so when I won't name the retailer because I can't, but when the second largest energy drink company came in and said, we don't want them to have that shelf, we're going to give you X many millions of dollars for that shelf, and you're going to move them to the bottom shelf at that particular retailer just to fuck with us. Well, that's when we know like we're making an impact, but at the same time, we're up against a giant. And so we have to try and use jiu-jitsu on them and try and outmaneuver them. And so.
But what a cool, like, but I mean, that's kind of in my mind, that's kind of cool because that's like a rallying call, right? Like, hey guys, we're still here, but the big guys are trying to shut us out. Go buy our stuff because otherwise, that kind. I mean, to me, like that's because again, everybody likes the underdog. I mean,
exactly.
Like, and an underdog that when you get down to it, I've heard Jocko and I've heard you guys talk about the supplements and the amount of scrutiny that you go through to make it a good supplement. Like you were talking about Jocko, he's like big with, I want my kids to be able to drink this. If I don't want them to not be able to have this supplement because it's bad. So to me that's a beautiful thing where you can say, hey, again, this is an American company that's trying to do good by whatever, and we're getting shut out by these companies that don't give a damn about you other than just take your money and get you all stimulated up, right? So
exactly. Yeah, no, exactly. And we've definitely tried to do exactly what you said. And, it's a call to arms to tell people like, listen, like we're at war with people that don't care about you. And we do. And that was the goal all along when Jocko said, can we make a healthy energy drink? And I was like, sure. What do you consider unhealthy? Let's make a list and let's do everything opposite. That's it. That's all we're going to do. Tell me we don't too much caffeine, preservatives, artificial flavors and sweeteners. Let's check them off. Like and that's what we did. We went down through and said, what makes an energy drink unhealthy? And we did the exact opposite. So when you go against the grain and you start eating market share of the big dogs, like you're going to come under fire, but it's okay. We knew that was going to happen. That's what we're here for. So, that's one of the biggest ones. The other one would be, I could tell people don't get into the protein ready to drink business. Like protein powder, sure. If you want to start a protein powder company, all more power to you. But don't get in the protein ready to drink business. It is a monster, mostly on the manufacturing side.
Yeah.
It's you're not going to get line time, and if you do, you won't get prioritized. And so, we have to grow with we can't outgrow our manufacturing capability. There's another product I want to mention, and that is our new pre-workout, and it's definitely a gym focused pre-workout. It's not your classic. Like we have 2 pre-workouts right now that would be more applicable for jiu-jitsu or like a run or a ruck or a hike or something.
Caffeine stimulants probably.
Yes, caffeine, no beta alanine, so you're not going to get the paresthesia or tingle in the current ones. So they're definitely
it's tingling.
Yeah, exactly.
So tingle.
Those exist. A lot of, not enough people know that, but those definitely exist. But the new pre-workout, we had so much demand for like and this is what we consider a high stim. Like, is there more high stim out there? Like, especially ones that are like gray area, like for sure, like those boutique ones. If you want to experiment with them, go ahead. But this was really meant to be like the replacement, a healthier version for people's like gym focused daily driver. Like this is your new go-to. And so it's got the classic beta alanine at the highest level of 3,200 milligrams per scoop, which is quite the tingle.
It's a dose.
Yeah, it's a dose. Yeah, 6 grams of citrulline, not citrulline malate. So 6 grams of citrulline per scoop, 2,500 milligrams of the betaine anhydrous. So a lot of pump, a lot of intracellular hydration, focus, and then 200 milligrams of caffeine and 25 milligrams of dynamine per scoop. So with a double scoop, I mean, you're looking at 450. Ooh, and so you're cooking. Yeah, you're cooking with fire at that point. So, 12 grams of citrulline. So your pumps are going to be explosive. So that's the new pre that's coming. And I reiterate, like, I wouldn't go train jiu-jitsu with it, but some people will. I wouldn't start with 2 scoops but some people will. You know, I think it was designed to go get a pump on. That's what it was designed for.
Gotcha.
Very cool. And what's the thing, like, what do you recommend? Is there a pre-workout you recommend for jiu-jitsu specifically?
Yeah, I would probably say our Go pre-workout. So we have a Go pre-workout that was an extension sort of the drink, but with a little bit more endurance focus. So there's some D-ribose in there, which is a great intra-workout. Carbohydrate quickly transitions into ATP much faster than something like straight up sucrose. So it's 95 milligrams caffeine, so like much more timid. There's no other real stimulants in there. There's theobromine in there, but theobromine isn't really a stimulant. It's actually a vasodilator, so it's going to increase blood flow. It's not going to cause pumps, so you're not going to like seize up with blood flow and hydration. So it's definitely endurance focused, and that's our Go. And we do have a non-stim, but the Go pre-workout's pretty mild.
Awesome, man. So if people want to get, obviously they can kind of check the website. If people want to get some of the supplements, find out more about what you're up to and kind of what Jocko Fuel's up to and what they can get some of the stuff we talked about today, where can they go do that, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, head over to jockofuel.com and originusa.com if you want to check out the Origin stuff. We're on Instagram, Origin USA and Jocko Fuel. I'm on there as well. Brian_Origin if you want to hit me up on Instagram. I am on TikTok a little bit. I'm a little bit less, let's say, brand associated there because I do a lot of shit talking. It's really easy. The amount of misinformation that's spread in that kind of health and wellness and even just like the general health space is crazy. So it's a losing battle, but it's kind of fun every once in a while to hop on there and like within 2 seconds you see a piece of misinformation. I'm like, all right, I'll stitch this. So
interesting.
For sure, bro. Well, man, thank you for being on the podcast and good luck with everything. Excited to see kind of where it goes, and we'll have you back on the future some time down the road once you guys get some new stuff coming out that you guys want to talk about.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. It was fun. It was great. Thanks.
All right, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. You just got done talking about pre-workout. I would encourage you guys to stay away from any of the hardcore pre-workout supplements when it comes to training jiu-jitsu. I've talked about this plenty of times. A lot of people get really addicted to caffeine. Like, for instance, if you're one of those people that I could drink caffeine and go to sleep, that's not a good thing. That means you've battered your system with caffeine.
Tolerance is crazy.
Yeah, you battered it's like talking to an alcoholic who says like, I can drink a whole 6-pack and I don't feel anything. That's not a good thing, right? Like that means that you've blasted your body with this drug, this stimulant, so much that you don't even have a response to it anymore, right? And I get it. I've been there before. I totally understand, right? One of the beautiful things is if you start to like lighten up on it, or even take a sort of a break from caffeine, which I know, oh my God, if you sort of get away from it for a little bit, or at least take a little bit less, you would be surprised at how your body then starts to get more of a pep from less caffeine.
Yeah.
Because again, you start to, all of a sudden you start to realize this thing does have an effect. You do have it, because a lot of people have been on caffeine for so long, they don't even realize, right? They take caffeine to be normal.
Right.
Like, whereas like, for instance, like we've both talked about this and I think both of us do it. We'll have periods where we get off of caffeine. I'll switch to green tea to get rid of the headaches for a couple weeks, and then I'll just get off caffeine completely for a few weeks and, do that as long as I want. And then I'll start adding in coffee whenever I want. And the cool part is like, I can drink like a small cup of coffee, sometimes half a cup of coffee, and I'm like jazzed up and just like, let's go. I'm so excited about it. Whereas, before I used to be able to just drink coffee and like, I didn't feel anything. But anyway, going back to that, when you do take a lot of caffeine and other stimulants, especially if it's a pre-workout that's got stuff to like get the pump on, it is terrible for jiu-jitsu training. It's terrible for cardiovascular training when you're getting those massive dumps of stimulants. You can just think about your body, right? Let's think about your body like a car. When you take those type of supplements, you're basically your physiological response, right? We're essentially taking your car, and if your car is idling, imagine your car, you get into it, and instead of sitting at that low idle, the engine's like just sitting there. It's essentially what's happening, right? Your blood pressure's rising, your resting heart rate's going up. All these functions are just going up at rest. And then when you start trying to do a really hardcore cardiovascular exercise, which, if you guys have never worn a heart rate monitor, when you're rolling, your heart rate is up there. Like you're not like, it's not a casual thing. Like, like when I'm training hard with black belts, I'm at my top. I'm at my red zone, right? I'm up there at the very top there for periods of time. It sits in the orange and the red a lot of times against hard rolls, and you're probably there too. So then you're doing that, and you hit that line. You hit you start redlining it way earlier. And one of the things I've noticed over the years with many of my students who have otherwise normal like cardio, like their cardio is pretty good, I will then see them one day like sitting on the wall and like, God, I'm so tired. And I always go to them, okay, what'd you eat today? What'd you drink today? And sometimes I'll ask them, did you take any new supplements? Because this thing popped up so much. And guys, oh man, I just tried this new pre-workout. Like, oh, you messed up. Like don't take no pre-workout. Where I've had guys say, oh man, I, was feeling a little down, so I crushed an energy drink. You know what I mean? Before training. Oh, you messed up then. Like I told one guy, I was like, okay, if you're having a long day at work, drink a little bit of green tea. It'll have like 25 milligrams of caffeine, or roughly, give or take. It's very low. And then when you get here, just take a walk. Go walk for a minute. Like once you get the blood flow going, you're fine. You know what I mean? You just have to you have to get up and move a little bit. And a lot of times I think that the movement can be to me, it's a better, more long lasting sort of option for like getting your body to wake up.
Yeah.
Even in the morning, I don't do caffeine in the morning. I work out in the morning. And when I'm done working out, I feel great. And then I have the caffeine afterwards for recovery or for, to focus on the work that I have to do. But I don't like it in the morning because it's like, I don't want it right now. It's like, I can wake up naturally. But anyway, I'm just sharing that with you guys. Just be mindful of it because, and then that said, with some of the guys that I've had who have fought me on this, some of the students, they're, oh no, gotta have my caffeine, gotta have this, whatever. I can just take a little bit less and just see how you feel. It can't hurt, right? If you just do a little bit less caffeine for a day or two and just see how it affects your body, and then test and retest, right? It's like a technique, right? We're always trying to test and see how things work. And more often than not, they go, man, I had way more energy for rolling. Like I didn't come in the gym like the ultimate warrior wanting to break through the wall,
right?
Like a Kool-Aid man. But when I got to rolling, I could roll longer. Yeah. So like, it's a good idea. And so, by the way, it's funny. I saw that I have some things that are like, basically they're little feeds that will tell me anytime like something gets mentioned. And, one of them tells me anytime like the word Jiu-Jitsu gets mentioned on the internet for something that's searchable, and the Jiu-Jitsu podcast got mentioned. You know what I mean? And it was like, yeah, it was like, everybody's like, oh, it's good, whatever. They it's like mostly positive, but it's always so funny because like I always, and it doesn't bother me anymore, but I always think it's so funny. Like I get lumped into being like, as if I'm like catering to like brand new people who don't know anything. It's like, because I'm always the beginner guy, right?
Huh.
And I'm like, yes, I am. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that because if that means that I get more people to stick with jiu-jitsu and they join, I will carry that banner proudly. But the thing is like the same stuff that I tell the beginners, the same stuff it's the same stuff I do now. Like it's like Brian talked about in the podcast. A lot of this stuff is very simple. Right? It doesn't mean
it can be, yeah.
Doesn't mean it's easy.
100%.
Simple doesn't mean easy. Simple just means it's not that complicated, right? And I think a lot of times there's this thought process, right? With thing where like people will think that you have, like for instance, like with advanced techniques or whatever, people think that you have to do something no one's ever seen before. But really, to me, when I think about it, when I think about my best moves, it's like moves I've that everybody knows. I just do them in a way that you've never seen before.
They're refined. They're extremely well executed.
So it's moves you've seen before done in a way you haven't seen before. Right. It's like you think of it. So it's not something you haven't seen before. It's done in a way you haven't seen before. When you look at guys like, to me, like Josh Hinger, one of my buddies, he just recently posted this and he's like, I don't like, he's doing like this one, it shows him doing this one takedown a bazillion
Snap
times.
Single.
Yeah. Snaps. Yep. Great takedown in the gi.
You do it. You do it. It's one of yours. I've seen, I don't know how many freaking highlights of yours I've seen you hitting that same technique.
It's one of the highest percentage takedowns, I think, in the gi that you can get, especially with shooting.
Yeah. Because
it's hard to shoot straight on. It's one of the best takedowns in the gi for a shot. And so he's like saying, look, I don't care about being unpredictable or like doing something no one's ever seen. I don't mind being predictable. I just want to be unstoppable with it.
Yeah.
And it's like Hodger said, he was like, hey, I want to be able to do a technique and you know it's coming, but you can't stop it. How cool is that? Right. So anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed the podcast. Again, thanks to our sponsors for helping make this podcast happen. Check out Charlotte's Web if you guys have ever wanted to try some CBD product. Again, they have a lot of different options there with the gummies, the THC. They have the regular stuff, but then also ones like the THC free / broad spectrum, where again, if you were tested by someone like USADA, you wouldn't pee dirty for THC products. That can be important for a lot of you guys. And again, I think it's a great supplement. As we talked about earlier, how important recovery is. I think it's a great recovery supplement to throw into the mix to help deal with things like sports-induced inflammation, and also to help sort of promote relaxation and deal with stress. But again, check it out at charlottesweb.com. Promo code is Jiu-Jitsu20 for 20% off the order. Also, thanks to Matt at Epic Roll. EpicRollBJJ.com is the website. If you want to get some new gear, new merch, anything jiu-jitsu related, check him out. He's got really cool designs, great customer service, and good quality stuff. EpicRollBJJ.com, again, is the website. Promo code is Chewjitsu for 15% off the order. Also, if you are a man and want to step up your grooming game, or you have a man in your life and you'd like to give them a good gift, or you want them to step up their grooming game, maybe they need to get their body hair into order, you can check them out at manscaped.com. The promo code that we have with Manscaped, that'll save you 20% off the order and get you free shipping at checkout. It's a great deal. Chewjitsu20. So CHEWJITSU 20. Again, if you guys want to check them out, probably the best thing that they have is their performance package. You go, it has a trimmer, it has some different other products in there, and it comes in a nice little box. Would make a great gift for someone, or would give you a chance to try out, get a sample of their stuff to sort of see what you think, and you can go from there. Also, if you guys want to support the podcast directly, you can do so by going to our Patreon at patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast, and you'll get access to an exclusive library of content. And you'll also get an ad-free version of this podcast that if you don't want to listen to these ads. And again, you get to support the podcast that you listen to each and every week for an inexpensive price. And we appreciate you if you do. Also, last but not least, if you guys want to join my daily email that I send out, or get my daily email that's sent out, you can join the Chew Crew by joining at my website, chewjitsu.net/join, JOIN. When you join, you'll get access to some exclusive ebooks that I give away, some exclusive discounts that I give away only to the email group. And again, very simple to join, and you can unsubscribe at any time if you don't like it. And so again, check me out at chewjitsu.net/join to get that daily email. And guys, with that said, thank you so much for joining us this week, and we will see you next time.